Just for everybody that don't know, this is my dad, Joe E. Middle initial stands for Inoke Gutierrez. I'm just gonna have him share his short testimony of how he started in the army, and so I'm gonna just let him go ahead and tell you guys a little bit about his story. Okay, so Dad, how did you start in the army?
I got drafted when I right out of high school.
How old were you?
What, 16,
16, 17?
17, 17 or 18.
17 or 18?
17 or 18.
Okay. Just tell me how that went. Tell me how it all went. Like, how did it start? Did they reach out to you? What happened?
Well, that's one day I got notice from, uh, I guess, say the president of the United States
Okay.
getting drafted, and they were drafting a lot of young men from high school, right after high school, and that. So it just so happened that I happened to be one of them. I got drafted, and they took me to Fort Douglas, where they used to do the induction to the army and everything at that time. And from there, I went to um, Texas to Fort Bliss for a while, just overnight. Uh, and from Fort Bliss, I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and I took basic training, all the kind of training that I needed. And when we got there, they told us that the reason was they were drafting a lot of soldiers at the time. Vietnam had just got started, and we happened to go on. And I happened to be in the unit that was being drafted to get in um, full power to go to Vietnam. So I took my basic training, all kinds of trainings that we took at Fort Lewis, Washington. And from Fort Lewis, Washington, we went to Vietnam. We went by boat. It took us like 30 days to get to where we were going, a little island, a little place called Tui Wa at the time. That was where we landed. From there, I used to pull, kind of a little bit of jungle training and that. And then after about 3 or 4 months later, they called the unit into the Central Highlands. Central Highlands was a lot of mountains in the Nile, but the enemy there was all NVA, North Vietnamese Army encounter, and they were pretty bad uh, people to deal with because they all had mostly automatic weapons, and so it was a big unit. So if we had any kind of contact, it was always companies, and so it was an experience that we had. Uh, so happened to have two sergeants that had been in Korea, so they knew about combat. They used to train us and then let us know what to look for. And the enemy would always leave some kind of a sign, so we would know that it was the enemy that was. So we were pretty prepared to encounter. Like I said, their weapons were probably a little more superior than ours because, like I said, ours was the M16 at that time. It just got put in the military as military weapon, but it was nothing like compared to the AK. The AK-47 was strictly automatic, and ours was you could either fire at single shot or automatic either way. But there was more superior as far as firepower. But we had, like I said, M60 machine guns and 50 caliber machine guns, which were all automatic. And but
How long, Dad, were you actually in Vietnam?
In Vietnam, I was um, almost a year.
Almost a
Yeah,
year.
almost a year. And all of a sudden, they said they used to call it a port call. And then when they first sergeant came, he says, "Gutierrez," he says, "get your stuff ready." He says, "the port call just come in." He says, "You're going to go home." So I came home, uh, but Vietnam was something that was, and even up to this date, I can, recall a lot of. I had a couple of my best friend died in my arms, and a couple of other guys that got killed and got wounded, and
So did you get wounded in Vietnam, Dan?
I did. I got hit by, ran into a booby trap. And booby trap was a grenade that they used to set up on the trails, and then all you had to do was just they had like a wire or even with uh, trees, and then they set it up so that we were, we were walking through it, and they strip it, and it would the grenade would fall off to the trail, uh, and then I seen when the grenade fell, and then, but I turned around to hit the ground. About the time I jumped, the grenade went off, and that's when I got hit in the chest and my legs and that up and
Mm.
behind my ear.
So you were saying when you had a couple of friends that died in your arms. What happened? How did that happen?
Well, this guy he was his dad had got killed in Korea, so I kept on him to try to get him to go home because he was the oldest in the family. I kept on him to go home and take care of him, but his this friend of mine, we were talking. Me and him were talking. We had gotten uh, sniper shots and that, from around the village that was close, and the company was out to clearing out the place, and then me and this guy Antonio were talking, and like I said, he was a pretty big guy. He used to play pitch for the the Albuquerque Dukes in Albuquerque,
Mm.
and he was a good soldier, and but as big as he was, he made a big target. And me and him were talking, and all of a sudden I heard a shot go off, and then I heard him go, and I see where he got hit right in the chest, right in the, I'd say right in the heart, because I picked him up to help him, to try to keep him alive, but where he got shot, it was a fatal wound, so it didn't last long. And he actually had died in my arms. He just told me, "Gutierrez, it hurts." And I kept trying to get him to stay, more so I could, by the time the medics got, he had died.
Mm.
And that hurt, because like I said, him from New Mexico, me from New Mexico, we were good friends. And then uh, when the company commander had gone on they call it leave, we used to go on R&R. He had gone there on R&R. When he came back, he found out and he asked me, he says, they used to call me Little Joe. He says, Little Joe, he says, how come you didn't escort Antonio's body home? I told him I didn't know I could, sir. He says, well, yeah, you could. And they called the lieutenant, and the lieutenant told him, he says, I don't think he deserved taking him. And the company commander jumped on his case because of that. He says, he says, you seen him and Little Joe. He says, wherever where Antonio was, Little Joe was. It was we always together. He says, and you tell me he didn't think he deserved? Man, he says, and then he told me, he said, if I'd have been here, Little Joe, he says, you would have gone home with him. He says,
Mm.
you would escort. I told him, I says, I didn't know I really could. Well, he says, no, he says, But if you'd have known this, you could have pushed the decision. They would have to send you home.
Dad, you had told me a story before, man, about a friend that you pulled out of the line of fire that you felt like it was God's divine intervention, man, that kept you from getting shot.
Yeah, me and Tyus, this black uh, guy from Texas. Me and him, he was my like my backup man. You know, I was a point man. He was my backup. And one time we was going and we was going through this trail, and then but in the trail itself there was a like a gate, and I put my hand up I on the post on the gate post, and about the time I put my my arm up like that, a bullet hit almost right on my by my hand. And if I'd have let him walk, he'd have got killed.
Hmm.
And he told me, he said, "Little Joe," he says, "you kept me from getting shot or wounded." He says, I says, "Tyus," I says, "you know, I'm the point man." He says, "You just on my backup man." I said, "I know." He said, "But hey, it was you that kept me from getting shot." He goes, "Because you kept me from walking across the gate." He goes, things like that happened, you know. I'm not saying it was coincidence. I'm saying God was with us both, because his family were, you know, being black, he was pretty religious too, you know, as far as going to church and that. He was raised in church, Baptist and that. And so he told me, he says, "Yeah," he said, "Little Joe," he says, "it was somebody was watching over us."
Right. So, Dad, tell me about your relationship with God. Tell me, um, you know, give me a short testimony of your relationship with God and how much, how thankful you are about God, bringing you back home from Vietnam.
Well, you know, I was raised in the Assembly of God Church, and Assembly of God Church, for a lot that don't know, was a pretty believing that God was always with you. You know, all you had to do is just trust in Him and serve Him. And we used to, me and my brothers used to go to services in Salt Lake, clear over to Dragerton because they had youth services, and we'd go there. The youth used to go over there. So in church, I was pretty active as far as being, you know, we used to have been singing the choir and everything. And so I always trusted in God, you know, that He would be with me wherever I went. But sometimes, you know, we kind of try to do it on our own, and but God is always once you know God, He never leaves you. He never forsakes you. It's us that stray away from Him because
Amen.
He's there He's just waiting for you to say, "Here I am, Lord." And a lot of times, you know, I was the point man for the company, and I was always saying, "Lord, if it's going to be Your will, let it be, but be with me, protect me, help me." And I can say I didn't do it on my own, you know, my own training, and that it was God that was there. His hand was there because there was a lot of times that we used to get snipers and that, and they used to shoot at us, and I, you know, never got anybody in our company really uh, killed him. We got some kills, yeah, but it was something that in combat, it's got to happen sooner or later. You know, somebody's got to die.
Right. So let me ask you this: once you got home from Vietnam, how did things go at first? I mean, when you came back, I'm sure you had a lot of, uh, you know, feelings about being out there and having to see people die and knowing that you had to maybe kill some people, man. When you got back from Vietnam, what was it like for you when you came back, and um how did God play in all of that coming back? And
Well, when I got back home, I couldn't sleep at all. You know, my mom would make a bed for me in one of the rooms. I was sleeping outside at first, when I used to live in West Ogden, or this place, and I couldn't sleep inside the house because it just I could hear I could hear my mom get up to go, or my dad to go use the bathroom, and I couldn't sleep. I'd be awake all the time. Half the time I slept I'd say with one eye open, but I couldn't. It took me a while to get used to being home. Little noise like that would scare me, would startle me right away. I'd be in for a defense right away.
Right. How did being in Vietnam affect you when you got home? Like, say your attitude or your relationship with God, or how did it affect you? How did it, what kind of lasting effect did it have on you when you came home?
My relationship with God, was it had deteriorated a little bit, but I knew I knew that it was God that had been with me. I knew that if it wouldn't have been for Him, there was a lot, not a lot of times, but a few times that I could have got uh, um, shot, or even when I got wounded, it could have been worse than what I did.
Right.
So my relationship with God was, I never really left, Him like saying, forget about it. No, I would always trust in Him because there was a few other guys that had gone to, were either Baptist or some other kind of church, Christian church, So they knew, and they would say, we know little Joy, about church and that. So as far as our company commander wasn't a religious man, he was like an atheist. Uh, yeah, he was Hawaiian, and so he didn't believe in really going to church. But he used to tell us, he said, just because I don't go, he said, don't mean that you don't have to go. There's the chaplain would come around, and the chaplain is like a minister for the military.
Right.
He'd come around and he'd hold services and that, sometimes what we call the Holy Communion. He'd let us take it too if you had used were used to doing that. So he'd keep us up with the scripture as far as that went,
Yeah.
and would give everybody a New Testament to do pocket. That they
Right.
could,
So when you got home though, were you angry? Were you violent still, or like how were you when you got home from Vietnam? When you came back and had to readjust to being in society?
I was pretty angry. Somebody would say something to me, and I wanted to fight right away. It didn't matter how big he was or what. My reaction was to um, defend.
Just being used to being in that,
Yeah,
being at war. You know what
yeah.
I mean? So you still hadn't readjusted, and you came back. When you came back, did you come back drinking, or did you come back, with habits that you didn't leave with when you left? Did you come back and you had some habits that that kind of you know maybe affected you a little bit?
Not really, as far as drinking, as far as that went, they used to take us some beer. But beer is about the only thing that. But as far as drugs is concerned, weed you could find it at any village or anywhere we went. One or two, and cigarettes. I was smoking a little bit, not much. I used to smoke a little, but I buy a pack of cigarettes and I'll end up throwing half of it away because it wasn't really my.
Right. So when you got back, did you get involved in the church right away, or did it take you some time? Did time have to go by? And because I know as you got older, when I remember you when I was a kid, I remember you being active in the church and stuff. But did that take some time after you got back from Vietnam? And how did that play into everything as far as your relationship with God?
Yeah, it took me a while to get back to going to church. And my mom told me, "Mijo," she goes, "you need to go back to church." She goes, you were, like I said, we were raised in the church since we were little. It's not something that you could have, and you got to know that. He says that. we used to pray for you, and I know that God was with you when He was over there. And so you need to go back to church. So I went back, in church and that. And like I said, me and my brothers were, we used to go. They used to have what they call like conferences in clear to Dragerton and that. We used to go clear over there.
Hmm.
We were pretty involved in the church and that as far as that went.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Dad, I just want to tell you thank you for your service. It takes a lot to go and be willing to lay your life down for your country. Um, Sometimes when you come back, man, from doing that kind of service, man, you feel forgotten about and stuff. But I thank you for your service. Today is Veterans Day, and I just wanted to make a video, man, just honoring you for the service that you put forward, man, and was willing to lay your life down. But not only that, I wanted to talk just briefly about your relationship with God and how that's had so much to do with your life. You know what I mean? So, I just want to again tell you thank you for your service. Thank you for being willing to do what you did, because without that, we wouldn't have the freedoms that we have. And so I just want you to know that today you're appreciated. And I'm gonna put this video out, if you don't mind, just to share, a little bit of your testimony with people so that they know. Anything that you want to say, man, before we end this video about God or about anything?
Well, I know that if it would have been for God, I wouldn't be here. There's a few times it happened, that I know that it was God's hand that was there that helped protect not only me, some of my friends too, because uh, the one guy that used to be my backup man, he was from Texas, and he used to go to church too. He used to tell me, and I know that one time me and him were going. Well, not just me and him, but the company was going up this trail, and Tyus told me. He said Tyus was his name. He says, "Little Joe," he says, "let me walk the point." No, man. I says, "Come on, man." And finally, I gave in. I said, "Okay, Tyus." And he put his hand up on we had to cross this fence, and there was a gate, and he put his hand on the gate like that. When he put his hand on the gate, the bullet hit right almost on in his hand.
Hmm.
And I know that if he'd have crossed, like I said, he was like 6 something. He was a pretty big guy compared to me. When he put his hand out like that, and he was gonna cross, the bullet hit right almost in his hand. And he told me, he says, "Little Joe," he says, "No, man," he says, "I don't want to be no point man." He says, "I'll let you do it." He says, "I don't know how in the hell you do it." I said, "Well, somebody's got to do it." And but that day I remember because, like I said, he could have gotten if he'd have crossed the gate, he'd have probably got hit, got shot, killed, wounded bad anyway.
Hmm. Well, Dad, I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. And just want you to know, man, that we appreciate you for all you do. Okay?
Thank you.
I love you, Dad.
Love you too, man.
Okay.